Welcome back to Tabletop Assault. I'm Ross and today I'm going to be discussing supplements. Now, supplements are an area of the hobby that some people really do not like because, well, they think that sometimes they should just have all the rules in one codex, in one book. And that is fine, that really does work for many people, but I can see that supplements can possibly provide extra content and rules that may be helpful in future ones that might actually improve on the previous. But I do also believe that the way that they're being rolled out at the moment are incredibly egregious, and Games Workshop haven't provided good value for money when it comes to the customers, or even quality when it comes to rules. So today I'm going to look at the various different ways that people maybe view supplements, what a difference of a codex and a supplement should be, and then evaluating some of the supplements that they have done in the past, looking at the strong sides of them or the negative sides of those particular supplements, and then a view on what maybe a supplement should look like to try and give better rules and playstyles for their customers as well as value for money. First up, I'm going to look at some viewpoints for supplements, and I suppose in some way codexes as well, the different areas that people may approve of or disapprove of when it comes to supplements. So the first one is the codex is all that is needed. There's too many rules already. And I'd probably say this is a large growing faction of the player base, possibly the majority, who just think there are far too many rules and think there maybe should be a bit of reduction, possibly bring back in universal special rules. I know there have been areas of rules that have expanded on forces such as Legion traits, your Dynasty codes, etc. that have been well received, but there just seems so many areas of rules that has become quite complicated. Next, I like extra faction rules, but all the rules should be in one book. Keeping everything in one book would allow easier management and understanding of the rules. And I think this is also a very popular one as well. The only difficulty I see in this one is that when the rules are released, then if you're to say you're to supply a supplement a year later, once the community has time to play it and maybe some changes are made, you can put those rules in a supplement a little bit later, so how we saw in Psychic Awakening in a way, though that was kind of like testing rules for future as well. I just think that sometimes you do need a little bit of space in between, but some people would prefer one book and that is it for the edition, and maybe there shouldn't be any extra stuff. Maybe you might see them in a White Dwarf, but generally people want to be keeping it to one book. Next up, I do like supplements and the additional rules in separate books. Having a separate book would allow the main codex to come out and then follow-up rules coming out afterwards with notes from players. I am actually probably the biggest fan of this one. I would prefer a single codex to come out that gives us the general sort of way that we should play, and then maybe some time later we would get a supplement. Anywhere between about 6 to 8 months later, it would allow a little bit of the community feedback and such. I think that would be really good. You could even prepare a lot of the supplement by having the lore and stuff already written, but it's mainly the rules that you want to concentrate on the final part where hopefully the community could help. Last one is I like supplements. Give me more of everything so I can't find rules. And simply no, that's kind of where we are at the moment with the campaign books. You're seeing factions like I think Adepta, Sororitas and Drukhari that have had their supplements spread out between different books. I think the books are between £32.50 and £35, costing a lot of money when you are only interested in a few pages of the books. So I think that at the moment this is the worst way that you can receive rules, and it is the current way we're receiving rules, and generally I think that the community has spoken that we're just not happy with it. So we need to find a new way forward for this because it's just not working. Following on, I'm going to look at the purpose of a codex versus supplement. I really want to try and lay out what the aim of each one should be. So a codex should cover the basics, the real general side of a force. So you get your basic rules so you can play a force generically. This consists of a bit of the history of the force. It doesn't need to go into too much specifics of each area of what it is to be a Blood Angel. Is looking more at the Space Marine side. You have your detachment abilities, your stratagems, your warlord traits, your relics, your war gear, etc. Everything on the generic basic side that you could take this codex and play with. How the codex are laid out at the moment I think is quite successful. The quality of them has been pretty good. Balance in all things is a discussion for another time, but generally when it comes to the layout of the codexes I am quite happy with how they are. Supplements are the details. Supplements should extend the rules of what the codexes do and enhance the playstyle or narrative idea that you as a player like in that force. So the key examples are here, such as Imperial Fists are pushing for a bolter and defensive playstyle, Novak Dynasty Necrons favouring aggressive close combat, a personal favourite of mine, very different to different types of Necrons, and the Blood Axe clan who enjoy stealth and tactical combat as far as goes for orcs. Basically, you can take this generic sort of force that you have that does play in a style, but then push it towards different areas of playstyles that can be quite interesting. Now, many forces have different factions that could cover. You look at Necrons that have 6 dynasties, and many of them are quite different from each other. Space Marines is a bit more difficult. They have so many First Founding Legions, and they have their Black Templars, and they are quite unique in all in different ways, and just making them play differently is quite essential. Look at Blood Angels versus Space Wolves. They both play combat, but play them in slightly different ways, especially how they work in the rules at the moment, where Space Wolves seem to favour pluses to hit and volume of attack, versus Blood Angels seem to be augmenting wounds and AP. And although they are quite similar, they're extending that sort of close combat side, they are a wee bit different as well, and seeing that work out from away from the generic Space Marine side, which the Codex does, I think works quite well. I am now going to look at 3 different sort of supplements we have seen in the recent past. So the first one is evaluating Space Marine supplements, specifically looking at Imperial Fists. So the areas I'm going to look at, one, let's have a look at the lore, artwork and model display. So in this part, it is fantastic. When it's a book that is singularly aimed for one specific force, it really, when it comes to Space Marine books, they are love letters completely made for that force. They've got great lore behind them. They've got great imagery. They explain the sort of different ways the chapter's heraldry works. It really is very fantastic look at some of their individual chapters within Space Marine. So in that area, with the lore, artwork and model display, fantastic. When it comes to the rules, which is a big section of it, there is 3 individual units being named characters, which is cool. You would not really find that in other forces due to lack of quantity of HQ choices. And what I mean by that is in the Codex Space Marine book, you've got so many HQ choices, and I believe it may actually outnumber some other codexes, such as Custodes. They might have more HQs than the Custodi Codex. I don't think that might be the case anymore, but it's still pretty close. So having them in different books and different areas is not something you'd maybe see in other codexes, but it is worth noting in this one. They have 3 individual ones. The additional Legion rule, because they have their extra one for their damage, etc. Now, we had their Legion rule from Imperial Fist, then they got an extra one, and I believe that Space Marines are the only force that really gets this, so that's a big extra ability for them, and it's if you go Imperial Fist only. 6 Warlord traits, 3 for Crimson Fist, 6 relics, 8 special issue weapons, which essentially means 14 relics, 16 stratagems, 6 psychic powers, and 6 tactical objectives. In terms of rules, that is a lot and gives Imperial Fist a huge amount of resources, which creates quite a bit of an imbalance. I think in terms of the playstyle of Imperial Fist, it does honour it really well, and makes playing as an Imperial Fist feel more like playing as them rather than just Space Marines. But although it can be said that Space Marines are not probably in their strongest position at the moment, that may be the quality of their rules in general and being an early codex, having all these additional resources, especially in one of their legions when it's spread out between all of them, gives them a huge leg up compared to others, and at one point it was massively kind of overpowering them. Each time a new one of these codex supplements came out, they became a lot more harder to deal with. Overall, this is actually a really high quality supplement. I really like it. It's made for Imperial Fists, and if you play them specifically, you're going to get a lot of enjoyment out of it, not just in terms of the rules, but the interest behind the Legion, and I really like that. However, if you are a Space Marine player who wants all the Space Marine rules, and this was probably the biggest complaint out there, is that they then made one of these books for so many legions, and now you've also got the Black Templar ones, etc. It became a lot of money if you want to complete your Space Marine Codex rules. So on that part, it does become a little bit bad. You've got real good love letter, but then you've got it for every faction, and it just seems quite spread out and quite expensive. Looking into the Chaos side of Marines, Chaos Space Marines, we're looking at the Psychic Awakening, Faith and Fury part with them in specific. And with them, you really got Demon Weapons and 6 Legions worth of supplements. Now, in terms of lore, artwork and model display, this was okay to maybe a little bit bad. Because you looked at recent lore, which was fine, but you didn't get any of the sort of Legions specifically explored upon. Really, when you compare it to the Imperial Fists, it wasn't as detailed. Now, in terms of the rules also had missions which you could play and other factions represented in the book rather than just Chaos Space Marines. So this spread out the value of the book, where there might be a lot of pages you're just not interested in because there was Black Templars in it and some Space Marines, etc. You really just wanted to focus on the Chaos Space Marines. But what you got for the Chaos Space Marines was actually quite a lot when it comes to the rules. You got the 5 Demon Weapons, 6 Warlord traits, 7 to 8 stratagems, 6 relics and 6 tactical objectives. Now that was for each of 6 different legions. This includes Iron Warriors, Night Lords, World Eaters, etc. An incredible amount of additional rules that work to the playstyle of these legions. A highlight for me personally was Iron Warriors. I thought they did an incredible job expanding upon their rules. Now, there are other areas which they added extra rules. You had Vigilus Ablaze, etc. But really, having so many legions covered in one book just meant that if you were up for playing different playstyles of Chaos Space Marines, this was a real highlight and one of the strongest supplements I think they've had. It could have been better, but having all these legions in one book and someone who plays their Chaos Space Marines as different legions, I thought was a real highlight. And the last example I'm coming to is Vigilus alone, looking at Adepta Sororitas in specific. And what you get in this book specifically for them is really one entry, and that is for the Order of the Bloody Rose. Now, in terms of lore, artwork and model display, it's kind of similar to the Chaos Space Marine Psychic Awakening, where it's recent lore, storyline, campaigns, etc. And they do feature, but again, more focus on the setting, not really on the Bloody Rose themselves and expanding on their history, etc. In terms of the rules, this is really poor. There's only 4 pages dedicated to Order of the Bloody Rose. Much of the book is narrative updates and campaigns, but there are other rules for completely different factions in this book as well. Now, as if you're playing as an Adepta Sororitas player, you may not have any interest in the other forces, and you may not have interest in the campaign bits. So really you're just looking at these 4 pages, which come with 3 Warlord traits, 3 relics and 8 stratagems. Keep in mind, remember, that is only for one of the orders of Adepta Sororitas. On a positive note, it does, however, keep it very thematic to their order in terms of the Bloody Rose's playstyle, so it is good quality when it comes to rules that they do try and emulate in terms of what the Order of Bloody Rose wants to achieve. However, this is an expensive book when really it's only 4 pages worth of rules. And even worse, I believe it was in the Book of Fire, there was other rules for other supplements for Adepta Sororitas. So you've got 2 of the forces represented over 2 different books, not including their codex, and that is quite expensive. One thing to note is Games Workshop have also stopped selling those books. Now, I can't remember the last time Games Workshop really stopped selling a book when the rules are still in play, but apparently that has happened. So that is, I can only assume, due to poor sales and probably poor reception of how the rules are being played out. Simply put, I think these are the worst way of producing rules. You're buying a book that is nearly the price of a codex, if not possibly the same. I need to double check on that one, but they're very, very expensive, and there is only an area of, because it's covering so much, there may be only a small area of pages people are interested in. And I simply think that because these books, when the first one came out, I think Book of Fire was the first series, they actually reduced the price of the next set of these campaign books that came out, which I've never seen before, and now they're not even selling the old ones at all, which is unbelievable. And I can only think that the 2 reasons why this had happened, the only reason these 2 things have happened is because the quality is not good and the consumer base has responded, probably with their wallets. Basically, these books need to be better, they need to be better quality for the customers, and they'll be more interested in buying them. When you have a supplement that's only 4 pages long for your force, I just don't see it encouraging people to buy them. And finally, we come to my suggested layout for supplements. I'm going to try and keep it as simple as possible. Main thing I've got to say is, see, if I say legions, what I'm really talking about is like legions, dynasties, septs, orders, etc, 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 cabals, you get the idea. So if I say legions, I'm probably speaking about them. So the Space Marine Codex is 208 printed pages for £32.50. So let's set that as the limit for page count at that price. The supplement should be a collection of all legions, you know, dynasties, septs, orders, etc. Simply put is that you could have them like the Imperial Fist one, which is a great love letter to them, and if you really only play one of the sort of legions, dynasties, etc, then yeah, that is quite cool, but a lot of people complain that they just wanted everything under one book, and I think that is the right way to go about it. Similar to the Chaos Space Marine side we saw with their Psychic Awakening, Faith and Fury, they had it all in one book. Was it as detailed as the other one? No, but you got everything in one book, which if you're like a Chaos Space Marine player, it was really good to see. Now when it comes to lore, assuming there is a max of 10 legions, we're looking at Drukhari, who have 10 different cabals, cults and covens, at a minimum of 5 pages each to cover their characteristics, their recent history and special characters. Now that's only a suggestion. If it's 5 pages each, that's 50 pages. We're going to see that you can have a lot more spread out for it. Go include also images, etc. But really, if you say that is the minimum, you are covering quite a large area as well, and you can play about with the page count on that. In terms of rules, I would suggest per legion we should get 6 warlord traits, 6 relics and 8 stratagems, and that would be all. No extra legion rule like Space Marines, and no legion psychic abilities either. I just think adding the additional rule if you go 1 legion was maybe a little bit step too far, and the psychic abilities I think could get quite messy. I'm open to negotiations on that one though, in terms of adding psychic abilities, but keep in mind there are forces that don't have psychic abilities and don't have anything that actually change that. So an example would be Necrons don't have psychic abilities, but they do have Catan powers, and Tau, I mean, they have special abilities, but they don't have anything that even feels close to that. So that's where I was a bit more of the side of don't make too many psychic abilities. I also remembered I was a Drukhari player in 7th, and then I just got overwhelmed by other people having psychic abilities, and I had none. So that is, in terms of an area I think is good, where the previous sort of entries we've had with supplements in the recent campaign books, they've often kept to 3 warlord traits, 3 relics and 8 stratagems. I think that's a good format, but I would make them more warlord traits and more relics. It should only be about 4 pages to cover this, 1 for warlord traits, 1 for relics and 2 for stratagems. So assuming that we're 10, again going by the 10 legions maximum, with Drukhari having 10 cabals, cults and covens, and going with the above breakdown, we should only need about 40 pages for rules. Now there are going to be other areas where you are going to need additional rules. You might have individual data sheets for specific characters, etc. But overall it shouldn't take as much pages to cover them as you think. Looking again at the Chaos Space Marine Psychic Awakening, they covered 6 legions in very few pages, which was very compact, but you did get a unique feel for them. So that's what I kind of think when it comes to keeping all the sort of supplement X rules in one simple book. Sometimes that book's going to be quite long, sometimes it's going to be quite short, but I think if you cover all the additional forces and make them a lot more specific in their book, it's going to be looking a lot more appreciative. Simply put, I love the idea of the Imperial Fist one, where it is going to be a huge amount of lore on one specific one. I think it's really cool, but I would much rather see a book that was a complete collection of additional side and specifics when it comes to playing as that faction. Really looking at specific side of each of the legions to get a real great feeling of them. And that is it on my thoughts when discussing the future of supplements. What are your thoughts? Do you think supplements are just completely unnecessary? Keep it to one book and keep it there, and if you're going to update the rules, just do another book in a couple of years' time? Or do you see a purpose for supplements? Do you think that they do expand on the rules in a worthy way? And if you do, how do you think you can do it so that it's got value for players in terms of gameplay, but also value for money? Because I feel at the moment those two areas are very important and they're not being honoured. So I'm very intrigued to hear what people have to say. Thanks again for listening. Check us out on social media where you can see our upcoming projects. I've had to delay a wee bit in terms of projects because I'm trying to do a bit more discussion pieces, but I am still working on the Imperial Fist, completed the Blade Guard Ancient. Really, really cool model. I'm really, really pleased with that. And you can see all the projects working on, and we'll see you on another Tabletop Assault Battle Report.